Good morning, class.
Good morning.
This is the first lesson of the fall quarter. Topic of this lesson is be strong and courageous. And today is September the 3rd, the year of 2023. The lesson text, we are in Joshua, the first chapter. We read down from the first to the sixth verse. Then we skip and go down to the 11th chapter, the 16th to the 19th verse. And we'll skip the 20th verse. And we'll read the 21st to the 23rd verse. I know it's a lot of skipping, a lot of jumping. But be mindful for what I've always taught in my Sunday school lessons. If it jumped, that only meant that it was a whole lot for them to discuss. But that's a whole lot of information that you need to know to figure out how they got to this point. You know, so if you don't understand how they got to a certain point, like when you jump from one scripture and go to another scripture, and then you say, well, what are they talking about? The reason you don't know what they're talking about is because they done jumped 3 and 4 chapters. So to know what they're talking about, you must go back and read the chapters. Just get yourself in the habit of reading the whole thing. If it starts at chapter 1, go back to the last book and start reading through that. Because there's some way that these lessons, these verses are tied into each other. So you have to start reading. You have to understand what it is you're reading. Now, this is September the 3rd. We've had, I can't even count, but we've had numerous birthdays. Numerous birthdays in September. Well, August, September, I know my brother, my nephew, they had birthdays in August 24th. Both of them birthdays was on the 24th. My father-in-law's birthday was the 1st of September. Mike's birthday is coming up. The 11th. Mike's is the 8th. So we got a lot of Virgos going on up in here. September 16th, my grandmother's was the 19th. So, a lot. So if I don't get a chance to say it, happy birthday to y'all. And those that I haven't said it to, happy birthday. All right, so Joshua. Who is Joshua? Who is this mighty man called Joshua?
He's a warrior, mighty warrior.
Joshua was a warrior. Joshua was a fighter. Joshua was tough. Joshua didn't back down from nobody or nothing. Now, I've heard ministers say this. It's somewhat true. I'm not going to say he wasn't telling the truth. It's somewhat true. In order to read the book of Joshua, you can't be a wimp. You have to be strong, because the book of Joshua tells every man and every woman who they should be, what type of life that you should live. If any time that you are out doing the works of God, the book of Joshua tells you not to back down. The book of Joshua tells you to keep striving forward. And how Joshua came about is Joshua was a follower of a leader. You know, in order to be a good leader, you have to first be what? A good follower. So, with that, this is this story that I'm going to tell before I get into the lesson. Years ago, many years ago, I was in high school. And me and my father used to, he was the minister, the pastor of Miracle Temple. And we used to ride through, it was called Jones Avenue Extension at the time. We used to ride through and he'd say, I'd like to have that. That's going to be mine one of these days. He said, God done told me that that's going to be mine. I'd like to have that. I know somebody is already in there, but that's supposed to be mine. So now this was way before he even thought of true fellowship. So time went on and he made somebody else pastor of Miracle Temple, and he moved on to Browns Chapel, which Browns Chapel is where I grew up. And time just kept going on and kept going on. And then later on, he ended up coming to this facility, which he called True Fellowship. And this was the promise that God has given him. God promised him this church, this building. He promised him this building, and along with promising him this building, he promised growth in this building. And as we talk about the promises that God gave him in this building, that's just as the same promise that God gave Abraham. God promised Abraham lands on top of lands, people on top of people, numerous, and as Abraham went on, he promised Abraham the promised land. But Abraham wasn't here to see the promised land. So that promise was also given to Moses. And Moses was here, and Moses never saw the promised land. He saw where it was supposed to be. He saw the land, but he was never able to enter the promised land. But God still kept his promise. He says the promise isn't just for you. The promise is for the people. Right. So Bishop Mac Davis is no longer here, but True Fellowship is still growing. And the reason True Fellowship is still growing is because we had a good leader. And being that we had a good leader, all those that followed became leaders because we were taught how to lead. By following a good leader and doing as the good leader instructed, we learned how to lead. And being that we learned how to lead is the reason True Fellowship is still striving. And that's because God still has a promise that's not fulfilled yet for True Fellowship. So understanding that story, I'm just hoping that it'll clarify a lot of things when it comes to Joshua. It says here, now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. So this promise is still in play. Even though Moses isn't here, and you don't never hear about what happened to Moses. All you know is Moses died and God buried him. Yeah, right. And God buried him in a place that is unknown to any man. Mm-hmm. And he buried him in a place just so Moses could look out over the promised land. So we don't know what happened to Moses. Don't matter what happened to him. Mm-hmm. All that matters is Moses was a man of God. That's right. Moses led the people up to this point. Mm-hmm. And this could have been the ending point for Moses, because it ended with Moses to start with Joshua. Joshua was already talked of to Moses. That's why he became Moses' assistant, because God told Moses that I need you to get the son of Nun and bring with you, because he will be the new one in charge after he is gone. So Moses was teaching. Now, understanding who Moses was, Moses didn't teach Joshua how to fight, because Moses was not a battle man. There were certain things that Moses had to get help to do. Moses was not the one that was just going to stand out in front of you. Moses went and got help. Moses says, look, this is not who I am. I can't go and do this, so I need help to do this. God's sending me to do certain things. Bring me help. So that's how Moses got a little bit of his help, because Moses was not, well, at first, Moses wasn't trustworthy when it came to God. Moses didn't believe the things that God told him. Moses said, how can you send me to do these things when you know that I'm not a boisterous person? I can't do these things that you're telling me to do. But the thing about it wasn't Moses that was going to be doing these things. God just needed a body to go. So this Joshua, he learned how to lead by following Moses, because Moses was a good leader. Moses just wasn't a fighter. So when it comes to leading, Joshua was the perfect leader when it came to these people. And I need you to pay close attention to a lot of these names that's going to be thrown out in here, because it's going to take you to another point. He says that my servant is dead, now therefore arise. So this was homegoing celebration or something, however you want to look at it. The death of Moses, they were in mourning. Moses had just died. They was in mourning. And now the new king is about to arise. The new leader is about to arise. So putting down Moses to bring up Joshua, King Joshua. Now, there was a lot of others that was around. And you know how folks are. Why he got to be the leader? Why I can't be the leader? Well, the reason you couldn't be the leader is because God had already appointed Joshua as being the leader. Amen. You don't just go and jump over other people. When there's things already put in place, you're supposed to stick to that plan. If you don't like the plan, then there's other places for you to be. So God given this plan, and those people that wasn't involved into this plan, they were elsewhere, and they were into these lands that Joshua was about to take over, because they didn't believe in this plan. So it says, go thou and all this people unto the land which I do give them, even to the children of Israel. This is the land that God had promised Abraham and Moses. This is the same land that we're talking about. Now, Abraham and Moses isn't here.
Right.
But the same land is going to be given to them. It says, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. Every place.
That's right.
Now, if we're going to get to it, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it before. When you're thinking about these places that God gave them, this is a lot of land. As far north as they can travel, as far south as they can travel, as far east and as far west. They got all of this land that they are going to separate amongst each person. And when they start separating this land, that we're going to run into a lot of characteristic type people, folks that's judgmental. Why do they get this? Why do they get that? Just like what I've been talking about in the past. A lot of people judge their lives based on how other people are living. So why do they get the same amount of land that I get when it's more of us than it is them? See, God has given them equal. That's what he said. He was going to divide it equally. He didn't say he was going to give you a certain amount because your family is this large. He says, I'm going to divide the lands equally. So it says, from the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea towards the going down of the sun shall be your coast. All of this land is going to be yours. If you don't understand what these names are pronounced, if you can't pronounce them the right way, just do the best that you can, because it'll be whatever word you called it until you get the understanding of what this name really is supposed to sound like. As I heard a minister saying these words on the television, and and the way he was speaking, I can't roll my tongue like that. So, there's no way I could have said these words the way he's saying it. So I'm going to do the best that I can. If I'm not saying it the way you would say it, Please forgive me because I'm doing it the best that I can.
Amen.
So he says he's going to give them all of this land towards the going down of the sun. So what that means is it's far east and it's far west.
Yes.
The sun sets and it rises and it sets and it rises. So that's east and west. If y'all don't understand the setting and the rising of the sun, it's east and west. So this is where he's talking about as far east as you can go and as far west as you can go when he's talking about the sun, towards the going down of the sun. So it says, there shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Wherever he go, can't nobody do nothing to him. Can't nobody destroy him. Can't nobody touch him. Right. Because the promise is set through Joshua.
Amen.
God says, as long as you're going out there doing my job, doing my works, I got your back. So anybody come up in your face, let me handle this. And God will set them down.
Yeah.
God will break down anybody that tries to touch his anointed. That's why it says the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's.
The Lord.
Because whenever we're doing God's work, anybody that tries to step in between us and God's work, God's got that. So we don't have to worry about certain people. We don't have to worry about things that's coming in our way. If things are coming towards us and we know that God had a plan for us and this thing is sitting in front of us, don't worry about it. Just keep praying to God. God's got that. It will move. As long as you are obeying God, it will move. And the thing about this lesson and all other lessons is obedience.
So,
That's what this is all about. Obedience.
Right.
See, think about Moses. Moses was a great man. Moses was a great leader. Moses did a whole lot of greatness. But why didn't Moses make it in? Moses done some things that he wasn't supposed to do. And it went down to being obedient. God said, stretch out thy rod towards thy rock. And what did Moses do? He struck it.
short the rod.
Now he got the same results. He got the same results. Because it wasn't Moses' doing. It was God's doing. God says, I'm still going to give you what I told you I was going to give you, but now you have disobeyed me. So being that he was disobedient, he didn't reap the benefits. Moses did a lot of things that God didn't ask him to do. Like when Moses ran down the mountaintop and he smoked all those people. And he just killed them all. He said, hey, whoever was doing these things, kill him. The thing that puzzled me about that was Moses was up in the mountaintop. Moses didn't see what was going on. So when Moses ran down, he talked to those that he thought he could trust and said, pick out whoever it was and kill him. How do he know that those that he picked out wasn't one of them?
That's right.
See, and that's what that puzzled me about Moses when it came to that point. See, Moses didn't do everything that God asked him to do. But Moses was a good person. I'm not saying that nobody can be good people because they be doing wrong. People are good even though they do bad.
That's right.
Now it says that God will never fail thee nor forsake you. Whatever it is you have to do in your life, if you put God first, God will make sure that you make it through. Because God will never leave you. Look, God is with us all. God is with the good as well as the bad. The things that God has for us is for us and us only. So when we're going out there and we're doing these things, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, we got it. But see, what happens if we're out there doing things that we're not supposed to do? Do we still get those things?
There you gonna get it.
See, God treats us just like most parents are supposed to treat their kids. You'll notice how I said that, right?
I hear you.
How most parents are supposed to treat their kids. So the way it go is, if you don't do as you're told, then you don't get what you want.
That's it.
That's how you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
If you want things, you have to do what you're told. So if we want God to bless us with certain things, we have to do what God instructs us to do. And the instructions is in this lesson. The instructions is between this lesson. That's why I said make sure you read your Bible, because the instructions that we are supposed to be following, it is between this lesson, not in this lesson. It says, be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land, which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Just like I told y'all the story about this church is not gone because there was a promise that was made with this church. So with those people, there was a promise. And in order for them to reap the benefits, see, God's giving it to you. But as I've been taught a long time ago, just because it says it's free doesn't mean it's free. You have to do something for it.
Amen.
So God says, I promise you this land, but he just didn't say but. That's something you have to do for it. What was it that Joshua had to do to inherit this land?
Amen. Obey.
He had to obey God. He had to fight. There is nothing that's going to be given to you without a fight. You have to fight for anything that somebody gives you. Any possession, you have to fight for it. If you don't want to fight for it, you don't need it. This land, Joshua had to fight. Now, verse 7, it's in y'all's lesson. I printed it out.
Mm-hmm.
Someone read verse 7 for me, if it's in there. I think I printed it out. It's not in there.
Mine is the NLT version.
Okay.
Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you.
Mm-hmm.
Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do.
Okay, did y'all catch the first part she said? It says, be strong and courageous.
Amen.
And obey some of the things. All of them. It says obey all of them, right?
All of them.
So there is nothing that you can do if you miss one law.
Mm-hmm.
If God told you you can have it by following my laws, if you miss one law, you can't get it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do everything. Follow all laws. And on top of that, you have to be strong and courageous. But you have to follow all the laws. Yeah, let me break that down for you, because there might be some thinking, okay, I'm following the laws. Okay, all right. This is what I mean. You have to follow the laws in season and out of season. Okay, so on Sundays, you can't be thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not on Sundays, and then Monday through Friday, you go and do everything that you wanted to do.
That's right.
Saturdays, you partying, trying to recuperate so that you can have a good time on Sunday. It ain't going to work like that. The person that you are on Sundays need to mimic the same person Monday through Saturday.
That's right. Definitely. Amen.
If you see me on Sunday, that same person you see should be on Monday too.
That's right.
That worst day that people don't like, Wednesdays, you're supposed to see that same person in me on Wednesdays too.
That's right.
So You can't be a part-time Christian is what I'm saying.
Right.
You can't come in here and say, I'm going to be God's person today and tomorrow is my day. It's my time tomorrow. I get to do what I want to do tomorrow. God got my Sunday, so he should at least give me the rest of the week. It don't work like that.
You sure don't.
Well, I heard a lot of people say, I'll leave my Holy Ghost down. I know you heard it too.
Now, if you don't that,
Put it down.
ain't no truth there about
You
that.
can't put it down. You might not pick it back
Then
up.
99 and a half won't do.
You have to do what God asks you to do 24/7. That's our timeline. I don't know what God's timeline was, but I don't know what it was when they was writing this Bible. But our timeline is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So whatever that is, that's what we have to be doing. We have to obey and follow God's command 24/7. That's the only way we're going to reap his benefits. Now, we jump down to chapter 11. Now, we are in chapter 1. Okay? We're in chapter 1. And we're jumping to chapter 11. 40 years done went by. Do you think they was just sitting there twiddling their thumbs for 40 years? No, things has been going on. If you start with verse 16, it says, so Joshua took all that land. What land?
From the east to the west.
The hills,
Still taking time.
all the south country, all the land of Goshen, all the valley, and the plain, and the mountain of Israel, and the valley of the same, even from the Mount Halak that goeth up to Seir, even unto Baalgad, in the valley of Lebanon, under Mount Hermon, and all their kings he took, and smote them, and slew them. Look here. This whole time, from chapter 1 to chapter 11, Joshua was fighting. See, Joshua did what we should have been doing. He did what we should be doing. I'm going to put it that way. He did what we should be doing. Whether you're talking spiritual or personal, he did what we should be doing. When you're told to do something, you need to do it that first time. God says, I need you to go and possess all these lands. Joshua just went and did it. Joshua says, these were the instructions, and that's what we are going to do. He went and did it. There were people that didn't want to do it, but God wasn't talking to them people. God was talking to Joshua. God says, I need you to go. Anybody that don't want to go, you leave them behind and I'll take care of that. But I need you to go and I need you to lead based on how you followed. Do you think if I was leading something and I had people following me that didn't pay me any attention, do you think I would leave them behind to take care of what I leave? Not at all, because they wasn't paying me any attention. God says Joshua was a great follower. Joshua did what Moses said do. So therefore, Joshua would make the perfect leader. So Joshua went out and he led. He didn't tell them what to do. He led. See, there's a difference from leading and being in charge. Being in charge, you can sit at your desk and say, go do this, go do that, go do this. See, Joshua was a leader. Where he sent you, he went to. The same thing with God. God is not telling us to do anything that he hasn't already done. The difference is we don't have to go through it as bad. See, when God came down here, he says, you know what, I need me a body. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, it's in the scriptures. It says, the Word was with God at the same time. So if they were together at the same time, when God says, let there be, they both said that at the same time. So when he prepared that body for himself, he called that body Jesus. That's all was called Jesus, that body. So God came down and placed himself inside that body of which he called Jesus. And he went out and he did things. He got involved in things. He went through things. The same problems that we was complaining about, he put himself in that situation. Because for him to understand us, he had to see what we was going through. So he went through it in order to take it away from us. All of the things that we went through, Jesus came down and he took it from us. Not saying we weren't going to have to go through it again. But now we got an understanding of how we are supposed to respond to certain things. What are we supposed to do when these things approach us? And that's because we've been led. So if we had to go through it again, it all boils down to who was a good follower. If you didn't follow correctly, you're going to be lost. So right here it's telling us that he took all the lands from the south and the north. As far south as you can go and as far north as you can go. He's already taken it as far east and west. So all of this land belonged to the Israelites. But it's not theirs yet. Because, see, God just told them, I promise to give you this land. But you got to do something to get it. If you go and do the work, I'll make sure that the land is given to you. But you got to go and do the work. That's like a child sitting waiting on allowance and haven't done anything all week. I promised you allowance, but what are you going to do to receive it? If you don't clean up your room, if you don't wash the dishes, if you don't sweep the floor, how do you plan on getting your allowance? You ain't going to get it. Just like us. God says, I promised you this land. What are you going to do to get it? I'm going to make sure it's yours. All you got to do is go. He's already said it right here. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. So wherever I send you, nobody can take you down. So why wouldn't you go? That didn't stand in front of Joshua. Joshua went. See, he was the George Foreman. He was ready for a fight. That was Joshua. Joshua was ready for a good fight. Yeah. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. See, that's why I say y'all need to go back and read, because Joshua took down a lot of kings. We jumped from chapter 1 all the way to chapter 11. How many kings did he take down? You won't know unless you read it. That's it. Joshua took down a lot of kings, which is giving him a lot of land, but it ain't his yet, because he still got more work to do. See, understand how God works. God created this whole world in 6 days. Man, beast, and all these things. Heaven, earth, hell. He created all these things in 6 days. And on the seventh day, what he do? He rested. So before things is done, you got to do some work before you can rest. You ain't heard them rest yet, did you? They didn't rest yet. So he's still working. It says, there was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. All other they took in battle. Nobody made peace with the Israelites. Everybody in all of these places that God says I'm going to give to you, they hated the Israelites. They couldn't stand the Israelites. I don't like them Israelites. I don't want them Israelites nowhere near me. Putting names on things. People want to come in your church. What's your religion? If you not Baptist, you can't come up in here. If you ain't holiness, you can't come up in here. Well, these people didn't like the Israelites just because they were Israelites. They ain't had no good valid reason of why. The Israelites was in slavery and they wasn't. What the difference would have been if the Israelites wasn't in slavery and they was? Would it have been any different today? Do you think God would have looked at them better than he looked at the Israelites?
No.
See, look, all of these things boil down to the promise, and the promise started with Abraham.
Yeah.
God wanted everything to start with Adam and Eve, but it didn't do it from there. God had to take them out. Said, you know what? I can't do nothing with this. Y'all are just too corrupt. It's too much going on. When you got more than one mind, God can't work with that. God says we all got to come together on one accord. Come together as one. We can't be separated or divided. We have to be together as one in order for things to work right. So God had to do away with people. I just got to get rid of you, and I'm going to start with you. I got to get rid of you, and I got to start with you. And it came down to it. Now, on this journey with Moses, God was just ready to say, you know what? Forget all of these people. I'm just going to take them all out, and I'm going to start with you, Moses. I'm going to bring all these people up with you. Let you go out there and start new. Moses is the reason God didn't do that. Moses says, no, Lord, no, you can't do that. You done promised these people now. You done promised them. Now, how would you look if you go back on your word after you done said you won't go back on your word? That was Moses. Now, Moses was great. Like I said, Moses was great, but Moses didn't do everything that God said do. But Moses did lead. He was a good leader. And you know, behind being a good leader, you got to take some falls. You got to take some hits.
Go through the problems.
You got to go through things if you want to be a good leader. There is no leader in this world that's not going to fall first. If you are a good leader, you are going to fall. Moses had to fall. Bishop Mac Davis, my father, he would not have known what type of a man he raised his sons to be if he hadn't let us leave. Otherwise, we'd have still been his children living in his house. So after we left, he saw what type of men he raised up. Not boys, he raised up men. He raised us up to be the men that we are, not boys. And in order for him to see that, he had to let us leave. So after being good followers from a good leader, we became good leaders. And now it's up to us. Well, I wouldn't say up to us, but we have to be good leaders now. And it's up to those that is following us to learn. If who we're bringing up, and I'm not going to say the kids, it's our children, because it's whoever is watching. Anybody can learn from you. They don't have to be in your household.
That's right.
But whoever is watching, be mindful. That's what I was talking about before. Verse 7. That's what I was talking about on verse 7. Be who you are 7 days a week. Because you don't know who's watching you. You are a role model for somebody that you probably don't even know. Somebody that you probably haven't even met. And if you change one day for being who you're supposed to be, what happens if that one time that person see you? Now what did you do? You've created a mess because they, in their eyesight, see you as a man or a woman of God. And on this one particular day, they see you doing something you ain't got no business doing. And in their mind, they're saying, it must be okay. So what did you just create? We got to be mindful of what we do every day. It's not in here. But verse 20 is very critical. Someone read verse 20 for me if you don't mind. Verse 20.
I have the NLT version again.
That's fine.
11 and 20. For the Lord hardened their hearts and caused them to fight the Israelites. So they were completely destroyed without mercy, as the Lord had commanded Moses.
All right. Now, you have a lot of people reading that verse, and they're saying, well, why didn't God just let them all get along? Why did God had to harden their hearts and make them fight? Don't take it that way, because that's not what God did. All God did was kept the truth at surface. That's all he did. He kept the truth at surface. They didn't like the Israelites anyway. So instead of letting them come around the Israelites saying, well, the Israelites, they done took out all them people I'm scared, so I'm going to love them while they're here. But as soon as they go to sleep, I'm going to find a way to get them. God made them bring out the truth. He says, you know what? You're not going to push nothing up on them. You're not going to say, yeah, I love you today. No, you're not. And y'all know how people are. People do that. They love you while you're around them. And as soon as you leave, they find out every way possible to destroy you. God didn't want that to happen. God says, I'm going to let them bring out the truth. So while the Israelites are there, God says, you know what? I'm going to make them do what they need to do so that I can get them out of the way. They didn't like the Israelites, so let's let them fight. Joshua's going to take them anyway because I told him he's going to win. Nobody can stand in the way of Joshua. So God says, you know what? Going to get them. They didn't even want to fight, but God ain't gave them no choice. God says, you're going to fight today. And you're going to be destroyed today. He's not playing with them no more. And that time came Joshua and cut off the Anakims from the mountains, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all that mountains of Judah, and from all the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. He took them all out. Joshua took them all out. I'm saying Joshua because you know how we do. We say the president took out this country. President took out that country. He took out this country. Well, the president didn't do that. It's the workers that did it. You know, so when I say Joshua, I'm going based on Joshua being the leader.
Leader, right.
Just like I tell y'all to mind how you act from your households, because what you do out in the streets don't just affect you. It affects your household too. So whatever you're out there doing, ain't nobody going to say Mike did it. They're going to say Sister Davis let that boy go out there and do what he did. That's what they're going to say. They're not going to say Mike did it.
Yeah.
So be mindful of how you act, because your name don't just have your name on it. Up in this building here, I know this is just a building, but it's labeled. It's labeled as True Fellowship. And up in this building, whatever people see either of us do out there in the streets, y'all don't need to go to that church. Them people is corrupt over there by seeing one person do something wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer just that person. It's this church family. So if we're supposed to be teaching a certain way and they see one person out there messing up in this church family, then that's what we're teaching up in here. So be careful is all I'm saying. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel, only in Gaza and Gath, and in Ashdod. There remained. All of these people was gone except for these people in Gaza, in Gath. Y'all know where we at? Huh? These people in Gaza and Gath, there's a story that's going to be coming after this. It's a story coming, and it's a great story. It's a great, now, these few people that was left, you remember I told y'all before that everything happens for a reason. Because I know I'm getting ahead of myself, and I don't even know when this lesson is going to be coming up. It might not even be coming up in this quarter, but it's going to be coming up. But I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. So God allows certain things to happen so that certain things can happen. You know, so he brought up a good king, Joshua, a great leader. He brought him up. But he saved these people from Gaza. He saved them people. Because there was another great king that was supposed to shine. This great king that was supposed to shine later, based on the people that still left in Gaza and Gath, was King David. Goliath was from Gath. So Goliath had to live so that David can be born. Y'all see how this thing works now. Everybody's looking at, verse 8 in chapter 1, it tells us to read all the instructions of the whole book.
That's right.
Verse 7 just tells us to obey all the laws. But verse 8 tells us to read all the instructions for the whole book. That means everything that was written in the Holy Bible is crucial.
That's right.
Whether it's a story or a law. Everything is crucial because that's a true story. Y'all know how you flip through the TV and you won't stop unless you see something that says based on a true story? And then you'll watch that movie because it's based on a true story. Well, you'll read this Bible because it's based on a true story. Everything in the Bible is true events. See, those parables we was reading, those were stories that was told in real life. Truth. See, if we all want to live by truth, then we need to get into the Bible because the Bible is all true. Now, it says, so Joshua took the whole land, all of it. He took all the land, according to all that the Lord said unto Moses. And Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel according to their division by their tribes. And the land rested from war. Now they got it. Now they got it all. Because now God says you done got it all. You done divided the land. Yeah, you're going to have some people complaining because they complain today. Stimulus checks. Stimulus checks now. Households getting $600. And then they say, well, why do we get the same thing as they do when it ain't but 2 people over there and we got 6 people in this house? Don't you think we need more than them? Well, they didn't say they was going to give everybody. They said they was going to give every house. They said based on tribe here. Not based on how many people, based on tribe. They are going to spread it equally amongst tribes. So if it's 13 tribes, they're going to split it 13 different ways. I don't care how many people in your tribe, they're going to split it 13 different ways. Not based on your tribe. Just because you got a larger tribe don't mean you get more people. So after everything was said and done, God says, you're done. Take a rest. 40 years he been out there fighting. Now, 18 says Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. He made war a long time. I mean, he been fighting for a long time. But the greatest battle was fought and won in one day. Why did he take this long to fight this battle? Because this wasn't just one war. This was the war of wars. He was fighting for more than just one person. He was fighting for more than just one place. He was fighting for more than just one inheritance. God says, I'm giving you all this land, not just a section. Look, if God says, I'm going to bless you with a house. If he says, I'm going to bless you with a house, and you think working at Burger King is going to do it, then the house that God blesses you with is going to suffice working at Burger King. Y'all see where I'm getting at? If God's going to bless you with a car, the car that you want is a Rolls Royce, and you're working at Pizza Hut. How can you afford it? You can't. You're going to end up with a Honda Accord maybe. Probably a Chrysler 300 like mine. You know, something like that. Because that's what you can afford. God's not going to let you take yourself out there and hurt yourself. You're going to hurt your own self. So when you're sitting there struggling, see, people say Christians aren't supposed to struggle. Well, Christians aren't supposed to struggle. Christians are supposed to make it. That's what we do. We make it. We don't struggle. We make it. Because anything that we need, God's got it for us. So we don't struggle. You may see us with a little bit of stuff. You may see us with the worst car around in town. You may see us with a house that don't look as good as yours. We're not struggling. We're making it. Because God allows us to make it. God says, I'm going to give you what you can handle. If you can't handle a big house, God's not going to give you a big house. If you can't handle the maintenance on a Mercedes-Benz, God is not going to give you a Mercedes-Benz.
That's right.
He's going to give you what you can handle.
Amen.
So I'm done with my lesson. I'm going to turn this over into the hands of the superintendent.
Thank you.